Will there be a World War III? Right now, the world is watching the Middle East with bated breath. Tensions between Iran and Israel have escalated to levels we haven't seen in decades, with strikes, counterstrikes, and fiery rhetoric dominating headlines. It's impossible to ignore the question on everyone's mind. Could this spiral into something bigger? Could we be on the brink of a third world war? Today, we're diving deep into the current Iran-Israel conflict, exploring its roots, the global stakes, and whether it could ignite a larger catastrophe. Stick with us as we unpack the history, the players, and the possibilities, because understanding this moment could not be more critical. Let's get started. The world is watching with growing concern as tensions between Iran and Israel escalate into open conflict in June 2025. With missiles flying, nuclear facilities targeted, and global powers like the United States and Russia weighing their options, many are asking, could this be the spark that ignites World War III? Let's explore the current Iran-Israel war, its potential to spiral into a global conflict, and the factors that might prevent or push the world towards such a catastrophic outcome. Caution: remember, this analysis draws on recent developments to provide a clear picture of where things stand and what might happen next. The current Iran-Israel conflict, how it started. The Iran-Israel war began on June 13, 2025, when Israel launched a massive airstrike campaign, codenamed Operation Rising Lion, targeting Iran's nuclear facilities, military bases, and key leaders. The attacks killed top Iranian military figures, including the head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, and damaged nuclear sites like Natanz and Isfahan. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the strikes a preemptive move to stop Iran from developing nuclear weapons, claiming Iran was at a point of no return in its nuclear program. Iran responded with Operation True Promise 3, launching over 370 ballistic missiles and 100 drones at Israeli military bases and cities, including Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. These attacks killed 24 civilians in Israel and damaged infrastructure, such as the Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei vowed a harsh response, calling Israel's actions a declaration of war. The conflict has continued with daily exchanges of airstrikes and missile barrages. Israel claims it has achieved full air superiority over Tehran, while Iran struggles to counter Israel's advanced military capabilities. The United States has also joined the fray, striking 3 Iranian nuclear sites on June 22, 2025, escalating the situation further. Why does this conflict matter globally? The Iran-Israel war is not just a regional issue. It has global implications because of the involvement of major powers, the risk of nuclear escalation, and the potential to disrupt energy markets and international stability. Here are the key reasons why this conflict is raising fears of a World War III. Number 1. Involvement of major powers. The United States is a key player in the conflict, providing military support to Israel by intercepting Iranian missiles and launching its own strikes on Iran. On June 21, 2025, U.S. forces conducted a direct attack on 3 Iranian nuclear sites, Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, using B-2 bombers and over 75 precision-guided weapons, including 14 massive ordnance penetrator bombs. President Donald Trump described the strikes as a complete success, claiming Iran's nuclear capabilities were fully obliterated, though Iran reported no significant radiological damage. Trump has hinted at deeper U.S. involvement, though he has not committed fully, saying, "Nobody knows what I'm going to do." Iran has warned that U.S. intervention could lead to an all-out war in the region, potentially targeting U.S. bases in the Middle East, with Iranian leaders like Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stating the strikes will have everlasting consequences and reserving all options for retaliation. Russia, a close ally of Iran, is also concerned. Russian leaders, including Vladimir Putin, have warned that the conflict could push the world toward World War III. Russia benefits from rising oil prices due to the conflict, but fears losing Iran as a strategic partner if the regime collapses. Putin has offered to mediate, but his proposals have been dismissed by Western leaders. Russian Deputy Security Council Chairman Medvedev claimed that some countries might transfer nuclear ammunition to Iran in response to the U.S. strikes, escalating tensions further. China, while less vocal, relies on Middle Eastern oil and has economic interests in the region. A wider war could disrupt global trade and energy supplies, which China would want to avoid. Other powers, like the European Union, are calling for de-escalation, but their influence is limited. Number 2, nuclear risks. The conflict centers on Iran's nuclear program, which Israel and the U.S. aim to dismantle. Israel's strikes have damaged Iran's nuclear facilities, but experts doubt they can fully destroy Iran's nuclear knowledge or its deeply buried Fordo facility. Iran is reportedly just 25 days away from having enough enriched uranium for a nuclear weapon, raising fears that it might sprint to build one as a deterrent against further attacks. If Iran develops a nuclear weapon, it could trigger a regional arms race, with countries like Saudi Arabia pursuing their own nuclear capabilities. Israel, which is believed to possess nuclear weapons, might feel compelled to use them preemptively, escalating the conflict to catastrophic levels. The world has never seen a threshold war like this, where one side tries to prevent another from becoming a nuclear power through military force. Number 3, regional instability. The Iran-Israel war risks spreading to other parts of the Middle East. Iran has called on its proxies, such as the Houthis in Yemen and militias in Iraq, to attack Israel and possibly U.S. targets. The Houthis have a history of attacking shipping in the Red Sea, which could disrupt global trade. Other countries like Jordan have intercepted Iranian missiles passing through their airspace, but they are reluctant to join the conflict directly. If U.S. bases in Jordan, Qatar, or the UAE are attacked, these countries could be drawn in, expanding the war. A regional conflict could also destabilize oil-producing nations, causing energy prices to soar and worsening global inflation. Number 4, global economic impact. The conflict has already driven up oil prices, benefiting Russia, but straining economies worldwide. If Iran tries to close the Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point for 20% of the world's oil exports, it could cause a global economic crisis. Rising energy costs would fuel inflation, hitting countries already struggling with high living costs. Reasons it could escalate. Direct attacks on major powers. Iran has threatened to target U.S. military bases in the Middle East if the U.S. continues to support Israel. If Iran follows through, the U.S. might respond with larger strikes, pulling both nations into direct conflict. This could force Russia or China to intervene to protect their ally, Iran. Miscalculation. Wars often escalate due to mistakes or misjudgments. For example, Iran might overestimate its ability to deter Israel, or Israel might underestimate Iran's willingness to retaliate. A single miscalculated strike, like one causing massive civilian casualties, could spiral out of control. Proxy groups, Iran's allies like Hezbollah or the Houthis, could attack U.S. or Israeli targets, dragging more countries into the fight. For instance, Houthi attacks on U.S. bases could force America to escalate its response, broadening the conflict. Nuclear escalation. If Iran moves closer to building a nuclear weapon, Israel or the U.S. might launch preemptive strikes. This could provoke Iran to retaliate with unconventional weapons or target U.S. allies like Saudi Arabia, escalating the war. Global alliances, the U.S. and its NATO allies, support Israel, while Russia and China back Iran. If the conflict grows, these alliances could be activated, turning a regional war into a global one. Russian warnings about World War III suggest this fear is real among some leaders. Reasons it might not escalate. Mutual deterrence. Both Iran and Israel know that a full-scale war would be devastating. Iran's economy is already weak, and its military is no match for Israel's advanced technology or U.S. firepower. Israel, meanwhile, risks overwhelming retaliation from Iran's missiles and proxies. This mutual fear could keep the conflict contained. U.S. reluctance. Despite striking Iranian sites, the U.S. has signaled it prefers diplomacy. President Trump has suggested negotiations, sending envoys to explore a deal. The U.S. is wary of being dragged into another Middle East war, especially after costly conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Russia and China's caution. Russia is focused on its war in Ukraine and may not want to risk a broader conflict. China, dependent on Middle Eastern oil, has economic reasons to avoid escalation. Both powers are likely to push for restraint rather than direct involvement. Weak proxies, Iran's allies like Hezbollah and Hamas, have been weakened by years of fighting Israel. They may lack the strength to significantly escalate the war, limiting Iran's ability to expand the conflict. International pressure, the United Nations and other global bodies have called for de-escalation. The International Atomic Energy Agency condemned attacks on nuclear sites, highlighting the risks to global security. This pressure could encourage both sides to negotiate. What do experts say? Experts are divided on the likelihood of World War III. Some, like Russian politicians, warn that the conflict could spiral into a global war if major powers get involved. Others, like AI models analyzed by Decrypt, predict a protracted, controlled escalation, lasting 12 to 24 months, with both sides avoiding all-out war due to the catastrophic consequences. Political science experts, such as those at Auburn University, argued in 2024 that a similar Iran-Israel clash was unlikely to lead to World War III, citing the cautious nature of both countries' strategies. However, the 2025 war is far more intense, with direct strikes and U.S. involvement, making comparisons less certain. The New York Times and BBC reports highlight the unpredictability of the situation. While some analysts see a chance for diplomacy, others warn of darker scenarios, like a regional war involving Syria, Lebanon, or Yemen, which could draw in more countries. Historical comparisons. To understand the risk of World War III, it helps to look at history. World War I started with a single assassination, which triggered alliances and led to global conflict. World War II began with regional aggressions that grew as major powers joined. The Iran-Israel war shares some parallels, alliances, proxy groups in a high-stakes region, but key differences. Unlike 1914, today's powers have nuclear weapons, which raise the cost of war and encourage caution. The Cold War showed that mutual deterrence can prevent direct conflict between superpowers, even during tense moments like the Cuban Missile Crisis. However, the Iran-Israel war is unique because it involves non-state actors, like Hezbollah, and nuclear proliferation risks, which weren't as prominent in past global conflicts. What could trigger World War III? Several red lines could push the Iran-Israel war toward a global conflict. U.S.-Iran direct conflict. If Iran attacks the U.S. bases and causes significant casualties, the U.S. might launch large-scale strikes, prompting Russia or China to intervene. Nuclear breakthrough. If Iran develops a nuclear weapon, Israel or the U.S. might launch a massive attack to prevent it, leading to a wider war. Regional expansion. If the war spreads to Syria, Lebanon, or if Saudi Arabia or Turkey get involved, it could draw in more powers. Cyber warfare. A recent hack on Iran's Novatex crypto exchange, blamed on Israel, shows how cyber attacks could escalate tensions. A major cyber attack on critical infrastructure could be seen as an act of war. How to prevent escalation? Avoiding World War III requires careful steps. Diplomacy. The U.S. and other powers should push for talks between Iran and Israel. Trump's envoys could play a role in de-escalating tensions. International oversight. The UN and IAEA should monitor nuclear sites to prevent further attacks and ensure transparency. Restraint by proxies. Iran must control its allies, and Israel should avoid targeting groups like Hezbollah to prevent a wider war. And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive into the Iran-Israel conflict and the looming question of a potential World War III. It's a heavy topic, but knowledge is power, and understanding these dynamics helps us navigate an uncertain world. What do you think? Could these tensions escalate further, or is there a path to de-escalation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. If you found this video insightful, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more in-depth breakdowns of the issues shaping our world. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.